Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Marvel 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review video. And today, finally, we're going to be taking a look at none other than the Wasp from her appearance in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But technically, this figure can be used for an endgame display as well. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing in my personal collection. It's about darn time Hot Toys got around to releasing this thing. I don't know why it took them so long, but I am very glad that it is finally here. Ant-Man finally will have a companion to go alongside him on the shelf. Now, if you are looking to pick this figure up, she is in stock and ready to go right now with toyswonderland.com, and of course, the link for that is down in the description below. They've also just launched their 12-month installment plan option. For those of you out there who do prefer putting your figures on installment plans, that is now available. Also, while you are down in the description, why not hit that subscribe and bell notification icon so you're notified as soon as brand new Hot Toys, third party, or any other 1/6 scale content goes live on the channel. What we're gonna do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. And here of course we have the box art for the Wasp herself. Right up there on the front of the box we have an artistic style representation of the Wasp that is not the figure, and of course the quantum realm sort of ebbing and flowing in the background. I do really like the metallic lenticular effect of the text right up there on the front. It also extends around to the side to the Hank Pym logos. On the back we do just have the relevant legal information. Now, I have been super excited to get this figure ever since I saw her in person at those cons way back last year. I honestly don't know why it took Hot Toys so long to release this figure. We never really get an indication as to what's going on behind the scenes, but there was definitely something in terms of why this figure was delayed. I don't know what it is though, because this thing turned out fantastic, but we'll save that for a little bit later in the video. Just know that first impressions are very, very positive. This suit looks amazing. Now, of course, you can see she does come with a bunch of other stuff here in the box, so what we're gonna do now is get all of this stuff laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything she comes with. And here we have all of the accessories that come with Wasp. Now, as you can see, it's actually a fairly decent supply here, if you do count the enormous wings that she does come with, which of course you'll see on the figure a little bit later in the video. For those of you who don't watch all the way through, right at the end of the video, I do always showcase some poses with the figures and incorporate a couple of different accessories you haven't seen me use throughout the course of the video itself, so do make sure you are watching all the way to the end. Now let's take a look at the display base first. First of all, I love the color. It nicely matches the motif of the suit itself, of course, red for Ant-Man and yellow for Wasp. I do also like the Wasp sort of shrinking down or growing in size right up there on the front. You do see Hope Van Dyne printed on there. I do have something to say about that a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned to the pros and cons segment. Now you can see she does come with the dynamic flight pole. Recently, people in the community have been kind of rediscovering the fact that these clamps can damage your figures. The foam used on the inside is incredibly stiff and it cuts off at a really sharp point there, so you do have to be excessively careful. Maybe even put a piece of foam over the top, just like you've seen done with posing with Peter. That way you won't damage the suits on your figures, because these things aren't cheap items. Now let's take a look at the wings. They are enormous. You can see there's a nice sort of hex pattern printed on the top there. They are translucent, which is a really nice effect, and I do like the metallic paint that they've used for the connection points there. There are a couple of things, again, that I have to say about these a little bit later in the video, but they are really darn big, and I do like at least the way they look. Now she comes just like Ant-Man with a tiny little version of Wasp. This time though, the connection to the base is a lot more secure, so I do appreciate that. It's really nicely pegged in there, so that means she's not going to fall out. I've had some of these mini Ant-Man style figures fall out a lot and fall over in the display, literally just by looking at them, so this is a much more secure connection. Now the piece that I'm sure a lot of people were worried about ever since we saw the Paul Rudd head sculpt is the Evangeline Lilly likeness, and I have to say, they nailed it. It looks pretty much exactly like the prototype in terms of the sculpt and paint application. This looks, dare I say it, perfect. I really like the way they've done it. I love the sculpted hair, and I love the detail all the way down to the little wispy bits on the side of her forehead there. Hot Toys have definitely nailed it. I don't think anyone's going to be complaining about this head sculpt compared to the one that we got for Ant-Man himself. Now, she comes with a few additional pieces. This one is, of course, the retracted version of the helmet. This is kind of the snoot part that's on the front there. This, of course, goes on the back of the neck when you are using the unmasked head sculpt. It looks good, it's painted nicely, it does tab in with this flat section here. It's textured, so that means when it slots in there, it's not going to fall out. So this is a really nice piece to have as part of the set. So too are the various forms of the backpack. Of course, this one is for the wings when they are folded up, and this one is to be used when they are folded out, if that makes sense. They are nicely done, they are exactly the same, except for, of course, these wing sections on the inside here. They do just peg in with these two enormous pegs. Yes, they are really nice and secure, but they are also really darn difficult to remove. You kind of have to pry on these sections here. While they are a little bit thicker, I still would caution you just to be a little bit more careful, because these pieces can flex, and I'd be worried about them breaking. Now, of course, she does come with a couple of the shrinking and growing discs. I mistakenly said in my Ant-Man video that the blue one was shrinking and the red one was growing. It's actually the other way around. The blue one, of course, does grow. I hadn't seen Ant-Man in a while, and that's why I got it wrong, but no excuses. Hopefully that does correct the issue that I made in that previous video. Now, she does come with a fair few hands. These are, of course, the style pose hands. Nice gauntlet piece on the back there, a nice metallic silver paint app, and of course the sculpt looks pretty darn awesome, with the texture perfectly kind of matching the suit itself. What we're going to do now, though, is get the Wasp herself out here and take a closer look. And here we have the Wasp herself standing straight up and down the lightbox, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. And I have to say, I really like the way it looks, as simple as it is just standing there. The detail on the suit is super intricate, it's mixed media, which means there's always a lot going on. And also, that head sculpt looks fantastic. I love the way the helmet looks. It's so angular, it's so well detailed. There's also pretty much a full face sculpt behind the visor, so it kind of just brings the entire thing to life. The body that they've used is a little bit larger than what we're used to seeing with female Hot Toys figures. Hopefully this means that going forward they'll make them a little bit more accurate in terms of the scale, because this one right here, not only does it look more proportionate and look more natural just standing there, but as I said, the scale looks a little bit more on point. What we're going to do now, though, is take her off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. And here we have the Wasp herself up close and personal, and I have to say, I am really impressed with what Hot Toys have managed to do here. This figure, for me at least, was worth the wait. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of things that I do want to complain about, but we'll save that to the pros and cons segment a little bit later in the video. Let's start off by taking a look at that helmet sculpt. First of all, I love the way they've done it. The sculpt is sharp, it looks really good, they've got all the details and the silhouette of it just right. I also do like the fact that they've actually included pretty much a second face on the inside there. You can't, of course, reveal it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the video, but still, you can see the eyes, nose, and almost the mouth are pretty much inside the helmet, which is completely unnecessary, but I'm so very glad they went ahead and did it. Now, you can see even more sculpted detail on the back of the helmet there. Don't worry, in the very next clip, I will turn the lights off in the lightbox, and you'll see what the helmet looks like with the lights turned on. And moving down to the actual bodysuit itself, the sculpted detail is nice, and yes, I did say sculpted, because this upper torso piece is entirely made of this hard style rubber. It is incredibly firm, and for some reason, it extends up to the neck. That means the articulation may very well be severely hindered. You'll see that again in the articulation segment. I know why they've done it, and that's to have this piece sort of peg onto the back there. They needed a strong, firm connection, and the only way to do it was to make this upper torso piece out of plastic. Again, I get why they've done it. Is it a little bit frustrating that it's not a little bit more flexible? Yes, of course, but I understand the thought process. The backpack piece is again nicely done. You will see it with the wings on a little bit later in the video. I love the metallic paintwork, and the wings themselves carry over that hex style pattern, and they are translucent, which I really do like. Now this part of the bodysuit isn't made of the stronger style rubber, it's more of a printed fabric, just like we've seen with Ant-Man. I love the textural detail. There's a lot to see here. There's a bunch of different textures all over the top there. Some people have said, why can't they recreate this with just a regular style printed fabric? And I think it's kind of evident. There are so many layers that work their way throughout this entire piece. There's the gold, there's the blue, there's the belt buckle section. I honestly don't think they'd be able to do that, so this is their really sort of best way at making it happen. At the very least, these trouser sections are just straight up stretchy fabric. That means that when you are moving the legs forward, yes, you may get some creasing up here, but those telltale creases that usually come up in this section right here, hopefully won't be happening. Now before we move on to the legs, I quickly want to make note of this piece right here. Out of the box, there's a piece of plastic underneath this wrist sort of, I don't even know what you call this, gauntlet style piece. That means you do have to remove it. It is incredibly challenging to push this piece back up without ruffling the outfit and sort of creasing it. You will have to wiggle it on there. Just take your time and be careful, and you can make it happen. But you can see it is nicely sculpted, painted, and detailed with that metallic style effect. Now moving down to the legs, they are pretty much all made of that rubbery style material. I know people are probably going to complain it won't hinder your articulation, but it will mean that if you are moving the legs, keeping the joints in those bent poses, you will definitely see some creases. Moving down to the feet, yes, Hot Toys have given us a split-cut boot design, but curse you designers at Marvel, why did you make these flaps come over the edges? Because that means the pivot isn't really all that extensive. It's a little bit annoying, but still, I'm sure you can get this figure into some pretty darn crazy poses. If Peter is getting the Wasp and Ant-Man, I cannot wait to see a posing video, because I'm sure Peter would kill it. Now, for those of you who are interested in the light-up effect, of course you can remove the top part and flick the switch there. I have to say, with the lights on, I really like the way this looks. It's not a super bright light, comes down from the top there, but it does a decent enough job, at least in person, maybe not on camera, of lighting up that head sculpt on the inside there, and you can see it does extend down all the way to the bottom there. Honestly, I really like this effect. I'm tempted, and this would be the first time that I actually do it, to get a permanently wired fixture for both this figure and Ant-Man, and have them lit up in the display. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison to her Ant-Man and the Wasp counterpart, being of course Ant-Man himself, as you can see there is a tiny bit of a height difference, but it's nowhere near as drastic as I was expecting. Usually when Hot Toys gives us female figures, they go a little bit too small, but this actually looks about right. Honestly, this in the display won't be ruffling any feathers, at least I personally don't think so. I really like how they look standing together, and trust me, if you do get a little bit crazy, a little bit more dynamic with the posing, I'm sure you'll be able to create a really awesome pose with them either shrinking or doing some other crazy acrobatics in the air. And to emphasize my point from just before, I honestly don't think Evangeline Lilly is this much taller than Scarlett Johansson. Let me know in the comments below, but this is a drastic size difference between the two here. Honestly, it looks a little bit weird. I don't know why Hot Toys went so small with the Black Widow body. Again, maybe it's accurate and I'm just dreaming here, but still, in person, it just comes across a little bit goofy. And of course, for a sneak peek at what my Avengers Endgame shelf will eventually look like whenever we do get around to getting the Volume 2 Gamora, and of course, the updated Fire Toys version of Scarlet Witch with the lighter hair, this is kind of how I'm going to have them laid out. I really like the way it looks. Of course, these are all the badass women of the MCU coming together just like they did on screen. And as I said, I really like the way it looks. Yes, there is a bit of a height discrepancy. I don't know why Black Widow is shorter even than Shuri, and people were saying that Shuri might be too small. It's a bit weird in terms of their choice of body for her, but nevertheless, all of these gals standing side by side, in my opinion, looks fantastic. Just going over articulation on the Wasp herself. Now bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be potentially a little bit more careful. When you get yours in hand, I'm sure you can push the joints a little bit further than I'm willing to go. Now starting off with the head sculpt itself, it is on a separate neck joint, but due to the nature of how the helmet is sculpted over the neck there, it is a little bit more restrictive. Also, this entire torso piece is made out of this rubbery style material, so it is rather limited. Yes, I'm sure you could heat it up or maybe force it to get it to go a little bit further, but again, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful. The arms themselves go out to about there, but you will see significant bunching in the outfit. You could potentially tuck this under the suit so you don't have to see it, but it definitely will crease that arm. Going forward, you do get it going to about there. I kinda wish they just had this as a separate arm that was covered in this fabric and then plugged in with a ball joint. That way we'd avoid pretty much all of this sort of bunching and creasing in the arm itself. But alas, they didn't do it. We do have a swivel at the upper bicep, a butterfly joint that is rather restricted, a double bend there at the elbow, but it doesn't go much past 90. We do of course have a regular 1/6 scale female style wrist peg at the hand itself. Now the torso, it actually gets surprisingly a large range of motion for the type of suit that this is. Yes, that's not enormous and it does kind of spring back, but honestly, that's more than I was expecting, including of course pivot and swivel as well. The legs themselves go forward to about there. Of course, the suit is again kind of restricting the range of motion. We do get out to about there. We do have a swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, and of course my favorite down at the feet, a split cut boot design. Just going over the 3 cool and 3 annoying things with the Wasp. The first annoying thing, and it's more of a minor nitpick, is the fact that it says Hope Van Dyne on the front of the display base. Yes, it does match with Ant-Man that says Scott Lang, but still, why? I mean, we don't get an Iron Man figure that says Tony Stark, we don't get a Batman figure that says Bruce Wayne, so why does this not say The Wasp? It's literally Ant-Man and the Wasp, not Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne. It's a bit weird, I know it's who the character is, but still, I do think the superhero name should have been printed right up there on the front. The second annoying thing is how firmly this piece does plug in. It literally feels like I'm gonna snap these 2 pieces whenever I try and remove it. Why on earth wasn't this magnetic? It literally could have just popped on there and then removed super easily. I don't know why it had to be so firm in terms of how they've gone and made this connect. The third annoying thing has to do with the wings. They are literally on this tiny little plastic post, and then when you try and move them, there is an incredibly large amount of friction. It feels like that post eventually will snap if you're not careful. That should have been a die-cast rod to make it a little bit more secure, because as it stands, I do think that this has the chance of breaking. The first cool thing about the Wasp is of course, just like Ant-Man, she includes a really nice cardboard backdrop piece. This time we do have an image of the figure actually shrinking down. I honestly don't know how they got her into that 3-point landing pose. It would be near impossible with the articulation that's included on the figure, but nevertheless I really like the way this looks. My only complaint would be that I kind of wish it had that yellow motif that kind of goes along with Wasp. This is a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more sort of Endgame-esque, if you will, with a galaxy in the background, but still I'm glad they included it. The second cool thing has to be this tiny little version of the Wasp. It's really nicely done. I love the translucent wings, I love the sculpt and the paint app. This thing is incredibly well detailed for its tiny size. The third cool thing has to be the fact that there is pretty much a full face sculpt underneath this mask. Don't get me wrong, you can't remove it and reveal it, but still knowing that it's there and seeing that you can sort of peek around the edges and see more of it is a really nice touch. Honestly, they could have frosted the lenses and not shown this at all, but I'm so very glad that they went ahead and basically sculpted an entirely new head sculpt underneath the mask, as well as the one that's included in the box. Just wrapping up on the Wasp, I honestly don't know what it was that made Hot Toys delay this figure as much as they did, but if it was for some reason that made this figure a little bit better than the initial prototype, then I'm glad that they delayed it, because this figure in hand is impressive. Yes, the articulation is a little bit more limited than I'd like, and the suit will crease if you get a little bit too crazy with the poses, but putting those things aside, the rest of it is all pretty good. I love the sculpt, I love the additional head, that you do have the lights inside the helmet that light up that face inside that honestly I still think they didn't need to do. I'm really impressed with how this piece comes together. The suit itself is very, very intricate, and while I do think that they could have gotten a little bit more creative with their choices of material here, overall, I still love the way this thing looks. The wings as well, they are big and they do give me a little bit of fear in terms of those little pegs that they're sitting on. Maybe they'll break, maybe they won't, who knows, only time will tell, but at the very least, they'll look good while doing it. They're nicely sculpted, they're really darn big, and they can move, which is definitely a plus. Overall, yeah, I'd recommend picking up Wasp. If you're getting Ant-Man, you're definitely going to be getting Wasp, and honestly, I don't think, unless she goes through a really radical costume change in Ant-Man 3, we're going to get another Wasp figure, so if you do want to add her to your growing Endgame collection, or if you're building out an Ant-Man line, this is kind of your one shot at getting a Wasp figure, so definitely pull the trigger and grab her now. And if you'd like to do that, she is in stock right now with toyswonderland.com. A link for that is in the description below. They do have 12-month installment plans now available if you'd like to pay off your figures over time. While you are down there, why not check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the awesome Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.